There we go. So with that in mind, I'm happy to put forward a motion to approve the 6 minutes. And I will launch that.
You can't motion because you're chair.
I can't motion.
Yeah,
Would
you
like
can't
to motion to put
motion.
those?
Yeah, I will motion. I'll move. Are we approving 2 meeting minutes?
Yes. Well, we're
okay.
approving the last one. I'm
Well-
happy to second Danielle.
Okay, I will launch that now.
Oh, from a CSIRO perspective, can I ask Dushi or Steve to not vote, please?
It's fine. I will not vote.
Okay.
That's fine. So from that perspective, the numbers carry that forward. We have 4 affirmatives, no negatives, no abstains. So I'll end that poll now. Right, so then the next meeting minutes to get approved. So we have 2 to approve. The 21st of the 5th meeting minutes, and I'll scroll down to the minutes. And I believe these ones were also, yes, these ones were also emailed out.
So you've just stopped scrolling?
No, that's scrolling now.
Okay, thank you. Danielle, I'm happy to motion approval.
I'm happy to second Marika.
Okay. So I will launch that poll again. Since I can't vote, can I +1 for that?
No, the chair can't vote.
No. Okay.
Chair never votes. You can't. Oh, well, no, I disagree. There's certain circumstances called out in the HL7 AU decision-making practices in which you can, in which there's a tie, to a degree, but no, the chair doesn't motion or second, or you administrate the meeting and make sure the procedures are followed, but you don't actually partake in the decision-making.
Okay. So in that case, that one proceeds. 2 affirmative, 1 abstain, and no negatives. So that passes as well.
Sorry for that circumstance. Please understand, we need to double check then who voted. If only 3 voted, if they're both CSIRO, we need to revote. If it's 4, it's fine. If it's 3, it's a problem.
My apology. I was distracted. I didn't vote. So can you add my vote to that?
Yep, so that would make it. Is it a +1, Stephen?
Yes.
For affirmative?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would make it 3 affirmative and 1 abstain. So then the motion carries. is approved. So on the agenda items, we'll move on to the updates. There's actions related to AU Base R6. I think, Danielle, did you want to pick up on this one?
Which one is it?
This is actions related to AU Base R6.
Oh, okay. Andy hasn't contacted me, so same. Waiting for
Okay.
Andy.
Okay, so waiting for Andy on that one. And then Marika, you've got to bring the proposal for medication strength and guidance intent forward.
I've got the proposal there, and I'm just noting Richard's not on the call. So do you want to just jump straight from updates into item number 3?
Yeah, sure. We'll go through and that's all that one also sits with you. So we'll move on to medication strength.
Dushi, just wanted to know, did your build end up finishing?
Not yet. It's still
Okay.
running.
No stress. Dushi and I were just problem solving a thing earlier. I'm just going to share screen. I cannot share screen while someone else is sharing.
That's right. I will stop sharing mine.
Cool. Let's just get the right window. Cool. Can everyone see my screen? Should be medication.
Yep, we
Sounds
can.
good,
You
yeah.
need to zoom in though. It's super tiny.
Sorry. I like having the
Bit
bird's eye.
more. Couple two. Yeah, no, at least another one. Yeah, that's good. I can see that.
Sweet. Cool. So I have gone and I've got a fork from the AU Base repo. What I've done is I've gone and added in an extension on medication strength extension. Just working with Dushi in trying to resolve how to constrain this down so it is just codable concept. So just noting the build currently builds with ratio and quantity in there from the R5 because it has all of the different ones. But have the extension there and a few examples, and I've got guidance across medication and medication strength. So for medication, under the profile specific implementation guidance, I've gone and added potentially useful extension here, which is the medication strength at the root level, just to mimic what we've done with brand and generic strength. I've also added a call out same here, the same way that we have done for medication brand and generic name. And then I've added this entire block of text. I might just give people a moment to read that because we've got guidance on medication. We've got guidance on medication strength, and then I've got a couple of examples. So basically, this is general guidance on how to use it. The guidance on medication strength is specifically for the medication strength, extension, the one that is already existing and that we were looking at voting to FFM 1 originally. And then this explicitly calls out, actually, I might start here. This is easier. So it's designed to support non-coded representation of medication strength. And then I've called out, you should use the existing element. If this extension, that if you can use the existing element, just explicitly defining, use it once, it's the whole medication. I'm not sure if there's a bit of duplicity between this and what's up here, but I don't think it's a problem. And then just an explicit call out to strength at the ingredient level can be surfaced using the pre-adopted element, which is what we've got as an extension on the other page. So sorry, any questions about general guidance on the existing medication strength extension on that?
I'd like to have a bit more of a tour.
Yeah.
Could you scroll down?
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. So it can only be used once anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a max there.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we can clarify. I mean, I agree with the in-principle profile specific implementation guidance, but it implies you can use it more than once, and we've structurally prevented that. Good on us. So I think we can just tweak that when we incorporate it.
Okay. Would you like to propose a change now, or is that something that
Nah.
comes later?
I mean, I'm quite happy for us to take a note in the minutes that the structure itself allows for only one of these. And that when we, like, as part of the editorial, okay, I'll preface. My assumption of this is that we will be really clear on the design principles and the key points of the implementation guidance, and then specific wording and refining might get,
Tweaked.
addressed, tweaked as we go through. So I totally agree with the intention. I see we've got it in the structure, and I'm satisfied to leave that level of tweaking for how we incorporate it.
Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sounds good. Does anyone else have any thoughts, feelings, opinions on this little bit of additional guidance here beyond what Danielle's commented?
It looks good to me.
Sweet. So if we go back to, we are in the base medication. So I'll just show you the extension that we currently have, noting that the intention is to constrain out ratio and quantity. Dushi and I just need to figure out, we were getting builds that had the same source material but showed different outputs.
Is it because the URL, I can take that offline with you guys. Have
Okay.
you tried the URL, and that'll be my question, of strength codable concept?
No, I haven't. That's on a list of, I think we got to a point where we're like, this is not working. We have a meeting that starts. So I can try that the next.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, although you'll have to test it, that's where it's assuming you want the X as in the choice, not the specific. So yeah. Okay.
Should be an easy fix. I'll try that after. And then if that doesn't work, then the three of us can sort of figure out where to go next. But the intention is fully to not have these particular parts. I have gone in and I've gone in and populated this based on, so this is, I've put in a definition, a short, and comments based on Gino's, he's working on a cross-version extension library, so there's some copy in there. So I've put in some copy based on that, that just talks about why we've done it and how it's used. I'll just give you a moment to look at that and put anything forward.
Just a question of curiosity, Marika, did I hear you say that the final version will be constraining out ratio and quantity?
Correct, because ratio is already something that exists in the base element, and we hadn't discussed quantity. So the intention of bringing and pre-adopting this extension was to support free text representation, as opposed to us opening up the existing extension and basically creating a new extension. So we were only looking at pre-adopting codable concept. However, if people would prefer that we pre-adopt more of it, that's why we're having
Yeah, I'm just mindful about sort of constraining it too tightly and then in future having to come back and unconstrain it. If you're looking at the strength of either the medicinal substance itself or active ingredient, it's not uncommon for them to be expressed either as a ratio or quantity in addition to codable concept. I'm just wary about such a tight constraint at this point in time.
Can you, to Stephen's point, and also what we were talking about making this work, because I totally agree that what we discussed is explicitly telling people how to do the codable concept, but being mindful of what Stephen has said, and it's a really good point, that by enabling codable concept, we don't want to prevent people from pre-adopting quantity.
Right.
So we need to be careful that I know what we were just looking at in the structure is there was this talk around, oh, we need to constrain it down to codable concept. So I think it's okay if we can work out how to just bring in codable concept and we go, this is the one we recognize. It still allows people to do quantity. It's just not officially recognized. Versus, I don't think it would be okay for us to actually constrain out quantity. Yeah.
Yeah, I would prefer not to have ratio and quantity being constrained out in our implementation or our implementation guide.
So just need to be, it sounds like.
We
Stephen,
can leave them out, but not constrain them out.
Yeah. Are you happy with that approach, Stephen?
Yep.
Yep, cool. Just writing down a note for me.
That would allow, if they're just left out rather than constrained out, that would allow anybody else who wanted to pre-adopt those and utilize them to use them rather than being locked out of utilizing them.
Right.
Which sounds much better.
And if you want to provide additional guidance on how to use codable concept to make it clearer, then that would be fine. My point being that I don't want to see ratio and quantity being constrained out.
So you would be happy if we just had, we're explicitly just pre-adopting the data type of codable concept. And then,
yes.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
So that's there. Is there any other feedback on definition shorts or comments?
I think Langdon had his hand up.
Just a
Sorry.
quick question. No, you're right. A data, so ratio, codable concept and quantity, is that a data types directly from R5?
Yeah, that's correct. So,
Okay, so that's the
we only
full
have
set.
ratio. That's the full set.
Okay.
Can you pop back to the diff view, Marika?
Yep.
So if we go down and to the point, I agree that we really don't want some of this because it's already there, right? There's strength already allows ratio. So we really don't want people to be doing this weird extension on it. But then we've talked about quantity and that makes sense. As far as I understand too, those data types are the same between R4 and R5. So there's no issue with it being like an R5 codable concept or anything.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, okay, so I'm happy with what we've talked about is the in-principle design agreement around the inclusion of this extension. I will say, and I'm just going to check that's the purpose, by incorporating this one, we're actually preferencing this. We're saying this is how we want you, if you're going to be doing codable concept, to be doing it, including text. We prefer you to do it at ingredient level. It's only if you can't that we've then got this potentially useful extension somewhere else.
Can you
do you get what I'm saying? Because one of these is actually in the profile.
Yes.
It'll be on servers and the other one isn't.
Yes. So yes, we've got guidance higher. I've got guidance higher up that we'll come to. I just wanted to give people the context here. So guidance around if you can use the pre-existing element, you should use the pre-existing element.
Cool.
This feels like a good point. Are we happy to move up to the guidance that I've drafted around this? So it's particularly this paragraph. I will just leave it for people to digest. Noting that there will probably be some word changes that will shake out when we do editorial changes.
The last bullet point of that subset doesn't make sense. Oh no, hang on. Now I get it. Well, sort of. Because you've got a precondition to get in there. Your precondition is when you've got no structured data. You said you can do free text, which is interesting because coding is still structured.
Yeah, yeah. That
So I think we
is
just need to fix that word structured data. And it's maybe more about when a ratio
Yep.
or yeah. Okay.
So it sounds like this needs to be when a ratio for medication ingredient strength is unavailable, this can be surfaced as free text via the backported extension. And then this guidance holds. This will need to patently change. I drafted this before I got some feedback from Dushi on where to apply the extension because I previously had it high level. So I will change this to ingredient.strength. And then I think that's all of the guidance there. I've got a few examples as well. Does anyone else have any feedback on this? Hearing nothing, I'm just going to move forward. So I've got 4 different examples because we didn't previously have any examples for the medication strength extension. So this is one for the backported ingredient strength extension. I've got it applied. This is what it looks like. Sorry, so you can see the whole thing there. That's that there. Does anyone have any comments? Hearing nothing.
Hey, sorry, Brett here.
Yep.
Can you guys see me? Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I'm running late too. Just can I suggest for the reference to the extension, we actually do. I think the canonical URL will resolve to the extension pack, and that might be good to include in the bullet point, just so people have a reference to the extension itself.
Yep. So you're saying add canonical URL here.
Yeah, so maybe just make a link, make it a link, yeah, of
Cool.
when you refer to the extension, just so people can click on it and get to the extension definition. Yeah, that was a.
The other, which I was just looking this up, percentages can be expressed as ratios. So you don't need that extension.
You don't necessarily need that extension. Where I think you don't necessarily need it, but it depends on how it is stored in the system. So in the system that you've got, in the system that has the source data, it's not always possible to easily go and express the data in that format because it is mixed data between percentages and like milligrams per mil, straight quantities. It's not always easy to convert that accurately all of the time to a straight ratio. But I do understand what your I do.
If it's just saying 15%, I would prefer we don't
have that
example.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that it's not structured to start with, right? That's the problem. So.
But if your system knows it's 15%, we do want to recommend you put that in ratio.
It's got a string that says 15%, but
yeah.
I know, but there's a difference between AU Base just going all the possible things that could account for all kinds of system quality. Or when people look at our examples, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to encourage that. I agree it's the way that's been expressed. I agree that's legal and it is. I don't want to encourage it though. So I would prefer it if we didn't have an example that looks like it, though I agree it's not.
What's a good
wrong.
example?
So would it instead
let's have a look at the others.
Yeah.
Would you then have the text as say 15% in actual word format rather than as something that could be interpreted
Let's
as
not do
value
percent. There's literally FHIR guidance on how you do percentages ratio. And so if we can get away with it, I would prefer we don't.
Yeah, but all of these are going to be some actually representable thing normally.
I think the majority of them are going to be representable. So to Brett's point, I think there are 2 that are probably representable, but they're at the root rather than the ingredient level. This one is a good one at the root level. Because that is challenging.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep,
So
that's good.
that's a good one. This one I have because I know that a better practice would be to have all of the ingredients listed, and have each of the ingredients with the strengths, but that's not necessarily how it's represented in some source systems.
Yeah.
So this
So
is
why have that an ingredient and not have that at, oh, hang on, at the root?
This is very common.
this is
quite
really
common.
common.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
This-
that is at the root. Okay, ignore me. Sorry, I had initially thought that what you'd done is have that at the ingredient level, and that was what I was talking about. No, I'm happy with that. That's okay.
Cool. This one maybe this is something again that could be represented as proper. So it sounds like what I really need is a better example for the pre-adopted version. So I feel like this is
It's the
one of
vibes of, yeah, it's the vibes of don't do this unless if you can do it in a structured way.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that we put in percentage, or that, for example, is a quantity going to the point of you can pre-adopt R5 quantity. We're going to get ballot comments that go, that's not a good free text example.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to have to fix it
We're-
anyway. We may as well do it now
Yeah.
and save us ballot time.
Yeah,
Yep.
where it's ambiguous or could be interpreted as something else, with those would be better to be dropped.
Yep. Okay. So sounds like first two examples, nix them, need a better free text example for the pre-adoption.
That being said, if you can't come up with one, like I said, it's illegal, we can just incorporate it anyway and work to improve that later on.
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's any reason to hold up acceptance of this JIRA issue based on that.
Yep. No, that's fair. That's totally fair. It shouldn't take me too long. It shouldn't take me too long. I'll just see what I can find. I'll see if I can find another one that is a little bit more down this alley. Or even possibly add ingredients to this or something. That might actually be a good way to go about it. Okay, so I think I've got, those are the examples. We have talked about adding a link here, tweaking wording, potentially tweaking wording there, and then this needs to be fixed. That is where I've arrived. I know that Brett, you did have an issue on the JIRA where you presented an alternate option. Did you still want to speak to that, or is that something that you feel as though?
Did you have the ticket there? Because I can't remember what I said.
Okay. So we've got a proposed alternative. I think my concerns particularly around this are it's tricky for things like this around free text guidance. Actually, if I scroll up, you've got my response.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because it was kind of advice.
Yeah, I think you were recommending advice as opposed to, I think I'm in favor of us still proceeding because that way we still have a way of representing that data that does exist in source systems.
Yeah, it was kind of like similar because it was similar to the discussion we had about body site in AU core, and about the missing aspects, like so there's kind of codings that include forms or don't include forms, codings that do include strength or don't include strength, right? And being able to give some advice on how to approach that. But
I think
that's
it's
more
one of those ones that
yeah.
feels quite complex
Yeah.
for medication, whereas for laterality it is simpler.
Yeah, yeah. There's more aspects and there's more elements involved, I think. So it's more, yeah. Leave that as a thought bubble and we can,
Cool.
Yeah. Cool.
For the existing proposal, noting the bits and pieces that change, is this something that we feel like we're ready to accept the guidance on, or do you need to see me go back and make these changes before we go and vote on it?
I'm happy with
I think in
changes.
the interest of time, I think that we are, in my opinion, we're okay to go ahead. It's probably not a lot to gain by delaying it and come back to the next meeting. So I'm comfortable with entertaining a motion.
Yep.
Same.
Oh,
Okay.
so Ruben, did you have anything you wanted to add at all? Because I know that in previous discussions you had raised some concerns around advice and clarity.
No, not at this time. Just to thank you for all your efforts on this. Happy to proceed.
Oh, I'd like to move that we then.
Is that?
I think that we, noting that some of the content may slightly change with the feedback that's been proposed, the friendly amendments that have been proposed. I'd like to move that we pre-adopt the R5 concept for medication creating codable strength codable concept, and then also add the guidance that has been proposed on medication and medication strength.
I'm happy to second. I think we could simplify. I think we could simplify that. I think it's noting the actions that in the minutes that I'm happy to approve the proposal as presented.
Perfect.
Oh, I think I'm a co-chair. I don't get to vote. So can you add my vote to that?
Yep. So there's a +1.
I think Brett is in the same boat that he's a co-host and he can't vote.
Yep. So that moves the 2 +1s. Right. So I will end that motion in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that is 6 affirmative, no negatives, and 2 abstains, taking into account the +1s. So that motion carries forward. Thank you all. It was a good discussion on that one. So the next topic on the agenda is the FHIR 46324, which is the Australian College Fellowship Slice for AU Base Practitioner.qualification. Did we have someone who wants to run through that one?
We have Michael Osborne here. I think that's the Michael Osborne ticket. Is it right?
No, it's a Brett ticket. I'm pretty sure.
it's a
No one
Brett
is
ticket.
sharing their screen, so I'm
That's right. I'm
reaching.
I'll bring that forward now.
Pretty sure this is you, Brett.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It is. Is there a branch link on there? Because I think there was a. Checking comments. I think there may be a branch link. Thank you.
It would be from the agenda page, wouldn't it? Where the link would be.
I thought so. Yeah. Yeah, so that first comment there.
That one there.
That's there is a branch with a draft in there. So I think this was looking at, there's an existing code system and existing value set that has some Australian terms in it that we're using for qualification types on practitioner. And the original ticket was to look at adding medical colleges that are known. So there was a new code system. So you'll see there's a mix there. The first couple of codes are Australian particular use codes for APRA. And then there's all the regular codes there, which are the inherited ones from the V2 table, which are kind of regular educational codes. And then there's a new code system, which is a bunch of medical colleges. So they've been sourced. It's in the ticket, but they've been sourced from the college accreditation kind of grouper. And so there's really a whole bunch of like fellows of different colleges and a few variations for some of them. So it's really just a proposed set of terms to add that could be used in that slot. I think the issue probably for me is that I'm not sure the interest still lives for this particular ticket. It was a ticket from some years ago that was on my backlog. And yeah, so I don't know, and it'll probably need some verification if people are interested in using it. So whilst it is drafted, I am
But
unsure if
Do we
people-
need a Zulip
Yeah.
poll on whether or not this is
Yeah,
desired?
yeah.
All
Yeah, it
right.
was originally an agency ticket from some time ago. It had there was a broader ticket to include other things, but this was pretty, I thought, achievable as
I think it's about 6 years old.
yeah, it's pretty ancient. But this is kind of a kind of conceptually there is a body that looks after these medical colleges as a umbrella group. So it kind of does give you a source to get this material together, but there's no real value set code system available. Go, Ruben.
Thank you. Is the group that maintains this willing to sort of ensure that we have it correct on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, this is, I think, the problem because I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in international, we call these sorts of things convenience copies, and they can be very problematic if you don't have an organizational MOU or SOU
Yeah.
with the actual owner of the content. And it also becomes problematic for implementers if the content is never updated
Yeah.
and things get out of sync with each other.
Yeah. True. And like I think the thing is it's not really a managed concept as
So
such.
could
right?
I
They
suggest
just list
that
yeah.
we go out through a Zulip community vote to determine if there is interest in this topic, because nobody has raised it in 6 years. So I don't know.
Daniel, is
If
Zulip the best avenue to do that? I'm not sure that the medical colleges who have input to this are aware of accessing Zulip.
But they don't need to use this. This is a FHIR code system. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, are any FHIR implementers needing this? And if they are, then I think one of the next actions should be the steps I think you were about to suggest, Stephen, around going to the medical colleges and getting some kind of formal MAU or that kind of thing.
Okay, fair enough. In that case, and if it's a technical question, that's good. And then we can
Because I
do
think,
step
yeah.
2.
Yeah, I think in the ticket there's a reference to because there's an umbrella body which like because I don't want to go to every college and discuss the way they do things. So there is yeah, so that first link there, yeah, is the source of this list of colleges. And so these are yeah, this is a Oh, it's been restructured.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
so there's this Australian Medical Council, which is basically they have accredited organisations. So they basically group the colleges, some schools, and yeah.
Because I
They
think
do.
we just have to first ask the question of,
Yeah.
does someone need this? Will this be implemented? Because there's no point us doing all this work and running the risk, which is
Mhm.
high, of what Ruben's talked about, if it's not going to be.
Yeah. It's I know this is a slot that exists in some systems, but it's usually just free text. Yeah, so this was an attempt to.
Brett, do you know if this information is carried by the Opera Pi service?
Not, I don't think. Actually, I don't know. That's a good question too.
It'd be helpful to find out because maybe they've actually done this and have the relationship with this group already, and we can just leverage what they release.
Yeah,
But
I think everyone's backing
I'm
away.
sort of
Everyone's backing
coming.
away from the alpha interfaces at the moment. Anyway,
Yeah.
colleges are-
I'm sure they are.
Because PCA, I think has dropped it as well.
So yeah, look, I'm not sure how much value this has from an interoperability perspective, but if we can, if there's a need and we can get that agreement, then sure.
Yeah, it's almost back to Daniel's point. Just go, is anyone actually interested?
I think
Is
this.
probably
So
the first
then,
question.
so then, do we want to take an action point on Brett to raise this as a Zulip poll so we can then decide where this goes from there?
Yep, I'm happy with that.
Okay, so we'll note that down as an action point for Brett to put that out as a poll. Which then means we move on to the next one, which is FHIR 50538, which is the AU Base Encounter to use pre-adoption for associated healthcare referenced support. Who've we got down to talk on that one?
This is Brett.
Is this a Brett one as well?
Yeah,
It is indeed, yes.
I've got some notes in there, but it's just because this was because this came from the original. It came through from AU Core, but it was adding the ability to reference a healthcare service from Encounter. We have an extension, a custom extension for Australian use, which was the original suggestion. However, in R5, there are some things we could pre-adopt, which are actually a little more explicit on what the relationship is and things like that. So,
so this would be
I
similar
would like
to
to
pre-adoption.
understand if we should be retiring the extension, which was created in advance of R5, right?
Yeah.
We knew we wanted a way to link encounters and healthcare service together, and we created an extension in AU Base at the time. But as you pointed out, there's now an R5, and R5 has included the ability to reference healthcare service in several of its elements. And I think we need to consider whether or not there is any utility in retaining the AU Base associated healthcare service. And even if there is, I think we now need to consider, is it different to pre-adopting the R5 element? Like, is it doing something different and we would carry that extension through into an AU Base built on R5? Or is it fully encapsulated by just us pre-adopting some of the R5 elements? That's my question to this group. I mean, I think it's pre-adoptable instead of using the AU Base extension, but we'd have to go see the R5 the R5 encounter and the AU Base extension and have a look at that.
It's worth looking at the R5 encounter because it's a whole lot more sophisticated, I think, than what we've done as well.
So this ticket is about healthcare services referencing the encounter resources.
Other way, encounter
Other
referencing
way
the
or
healthcare service.
encounter. Okay, right.
Yeah, we kind of have this extension that doesn't really say how it relates either, really. It just says, yeah. So it's whereas in R5, yeah, if you look at the definition there. Oh, can we look at the tree? That would be good. Let's go to the diff, not the diff, to the, let's go content, yeah. Let's scroll down, yeah, perfect. So there's a participant, you can see now in the participant element, there's an actor added now as healthcare service, which also lets you do periods of reference if that's relevant, and also type of participation. If you say have different healthcare services participating in different types, so it's a bit more sophisticated than what we've done. Yeah.
This is where it adds in as under the act of the healthcare service.
Yeah, so I think like if you wanted to just link one as a participant, you could just add the actor using preadopt. And if you want to say more about it, you can add type and period details if you wanted to.
My kind of look at this says to me that with the ability to reference a healthcare service in participant, that covers off anything we would have wanted to have said in associated healthcare service.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
I agree.
Yeah, and there's a little spanner as well. If you scroll up on that page, there's also the ability now to have healthcare service as a service type reference, as a codable reference, which I don't think that's not what the original purpose of the extension was, but I think the extension actually creates confusion with that kind of definition as well. So I think if people wanted to say add service type with a healthcare service reference, they should pre-adopt again for R5, but I don't think we necessarily. It's more just like these are useful pre-adopts. And I think the participant one was the main one.
So out of interest, is the type, because you've got type and service type there, is the service type there just a reference variant of the type? So instead of having a type, you'd have a referenced service type in this concept here?
Yeah, so you can have a codable and or a
You mean
A
healthcare
reference,
service,
a
yeah.
codable reference.
Yeah.
So for in other words, such as you can have a codable concept type of surgical,
Yeah.
or you could have a codable reference of
Yeah.
to a surgical.
Yeah, because they're related. There's some elements that relate between the encounter and the healthcare service type. Yeah, so
Versus participant, which could
yeah.
be a completely different, unrelated healthcare service.
Yeah, that's kind of like if you're participating in. So that's only defining the type in that element, right? And whereas the participation would actually say that this healthcare service actually participated in the encounter. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually curious about this change. Healthcare service, as it's being defined, is an abstract concept of services that is delivered by organizations or departments of organizations. I'm not sure how healthcare service can be an actor in a participation, though. So, but that's its.
Well, it doesn't have
No.
to be abstract though.
Yeah, it doesn't
It
have
can
to
be an
be.
instance.
It's
Can be
mostly not
like this
abstract.
specific, yeah.
Yeah, we
Well-
like in all the provider, like in the provider directories, it's they're explicit. Yeah.
Yeah, even though they are instances, they are services and not sort of entities that are sort of can play as actors. But that's
Yeah,
a
but they're a
different
group-
consideration
of-
altogether.
They're a group to say these services are delivered at a location by an organization. So it's an instance. Yeah.
Which is a very nice way of defining those compared to
Yeah.
some of the other ways of defining those as org types.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is kind of like a way, this is instead of explicitly putting a code in for service type, you actually just reference the service that's relevant, and you get the information from there.
So can I ask then what so if we do generally agree that what is in R5 satisfies the intention of the original AU Base extension, and we'd like to move to deprecate that,
Yeah.
would we look at pre-adoption, explicit pre-adoption like we've just looked in medication, or would we simply provide guidance, profile-specific implementation guidance on how to incorporate that information if people want to?
A cleaner way is to pre-adopt.
But
Yeah,
are we pre-adopting and deprecating at the same time, or are we allowing a period of
No,
grace
no,
for
no. You
movement?
do
No,
not
no,
have
no.
two active options. I
No,
think several
we-
are.
Exactly. So
Sorry.
if we decide to pre-adopt, we'll deprecate the extension.
Yeah. So yeah, like at the moment, I'm not sure what we do in AU Base.
What do you mean, Brett? What do you mean? What do we do? We
do we
reference
explicitly list
the
it or
associated
reference it?
healthcare extension.
Yeah,
We
we've
don't
got it.
pre-adopt any R5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the proposal. I'm not sure if the proposal covers that, but yeah, we would remove that extension from the profile. Yeah.
So
And-
is this an
Yep.
AU,
Yeah,
that's
so
an
the
AU based question, and so therefore we are bound by AU based rule not to be able to pre-adopt. Is that what you're saying, Brett?
Oh no, I'm just saying, like like Danielle was saying, which is that we would remove the existing extension
Yeah,
from use from
and-
AU Base.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
proposal actually actually calls it out. It does say to deprecate the extension and go for the R5 adoption. So that's already listed in the ticket.
Oh,
So-
I don't think I explicitly, have said remove
Looking
it
at
from the.
this, Brett, in the proposal, and we wouldn't, because that's not what we do in the first release. We would deprecate. First bullet point holds true. Explicit guidance, good. The third point, instead of creating an extension profile, since it's pre-adoption, you just direct reference,
Cool.
which is what we've said would be the preference, instead of just leaving it at guidance, that we
Yeah.
would incorporate in AU Base Encounter what that the actual explicit pre-adoption.
So
Okay.
we're basically switching the new one and deprecate the extension. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm happy to support that. That makes sense to me. I think that's a good path towards R5.
All right. Can
And
we hear
R6.
a motion on the table?
I motion that we deprecate the AU Base Associated Healthcare Service extension, that it is replaced by pre-adoption of, and I will be specific here, so I'm open to friendly amendments, that we replace it with pre-adoption of encounter participant actor as healthcare service, and that we include guidance on how to, that we've done this and how to incorporate it.
Okay, sounds good to me. I will second that.
Okay, and I will launch that motion.
Hang on, Josh, can
Yep.
we, as a point of order, can we ask anyone else who has any questions or points of discussions?
Anybody else want to raise any points to add to that?
Ruben has his hand up.
Right. So earlier you said you don't want two ways of doing this to exist. If we deprecate that extension, that doesn't mean it won't exist anymore. It just new specs and implementations shouldn't use it.
Correct.
So I'm wondering if you want to retire it.
We've got a
Yeah.
general policy
Yeah.
that is just general, but I mean, we could if it's such a problem. At the moment, we're deprecating something and it goes through a ballot cycle of deprecation and release, and then we look at removing it in the following.
I would say that we don't retire it for now, especially when we are looking at system out there who are still wanting to implement it.
We did
Well-
do a double check, and nobody. I know it's a small pool when we put it out on Zulip. I think Rob Eastwood raised a question on that, and we went and had a look that no one was implementing it. But again, that was a limited time pool.
Yeah, I am comfortable with deprecating at the moment and not retiring, as the motion has stated. If there's no objection to that.
I'm not hearing one.
All right, we're starting the poll. Okay.
Yep,
Add
I'll
me
launch
to
that poll.
yeah. Add me to the affirmative vote.
Is it a +1 from you as well, Brett?
Yes, I think
Yes,
Brett
thank you.
is,
Right, so that looks like the majority of numbers. So I'll let that run for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we have 7 affirmatives with the +1s, no negatives, and 2 abstains. So that motion carries. So from there, that moves us on to sort of the actions for the next meeting. There's a couple of actions that Brett to do a Zulip poll.
Before
Sorry,
we do
Danielle?
that, because we've got time, I guess if I've got a thing that I would be interested to show the people on the line, but I'm conscious that there may be other JIRAs or things that people have ready to talk about that they'd like to. But otherwise, I'll just say I'd like 10 minutes to kind of walk through a bit of a presentation of exploration of actors and so forth I'm doing and get some people's ideas on it.
sounds good, Daniel.
Yep, I think we go proceed with that.
Okay, let me
I'll stop sharing my screen.
so
so
yeah,
you can...
you stop sharing. And I will find a thing and I will put them in the oh no, I've got some of it actually already on Zulip because I was posting it this morning. So part of what I'm showing or I'm about to show. Right, I'm trying to share my screen now. Let's move out of there into the Australia chat. So we've got an experimental area and for patient summary because we're doing multiple IG inheritance and we're also looking at what's happening when we're using the latest cutting edge kind of awesomeness that Graham and the FHIR and the FHIR conformance people are coming up with around all the different extensions. And part of what we're looking at now is around actors and obligations when you are going to be in a downstream IG and you have multiple IG inheritance. Both of those IGs have actors. And you may or may not want any of your actors to be related to those parent actors. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. And how do you do that? And what does the tooling do? And what do you have to do as an IG editor to do things? So there's a little bit of exploration happening. We've got it going on in the experimental space. There's a weekly meeting with the IG authoring folks where we're having a look at some of this. And obviously Graham is doing great stuff around trying to show some things. So the experimental area is this one for patient summary. We've got a whole bunch of different testing things, but what we've got at the moment around the ACTA definitions is patient summary itself, Australian patient summary, is getting to the pointy end of an initial proposal. And the idea behind that is that we are going to have 2 actors. They're the Australian patient summary, consumer and producer. These will derive from the IPS actors because we have an agreement that Australian patient summary will comply with IPS and AU core. That's profile only for AU core, so we're not touching those actors. Request to responder have nothing to do with us in patient summary. But in Australian patient summary, they actually do, the IPS actors have a lot to do. So part of what you can do, I'm just sort of preferencing this, is when you define your actor, this is all just experimental, is you say what it's derived from. And so we're testing that out and what does it do? So that's the IPS canonical URL. I was in a chat with folks this morning about this, and we all think that the derived from needs to actually resolve the title rather than the canonical URL, like it does when you derive profiles, and that it should actually be up the top, again, like when you derive from profiles, so that that visual thing is similar. But one of the clear things in the FHIR standard for when you're deriving from an actor is you inherit all the obligations from your parent actor. And so I wondered what would happen if we have a few circumstances. So where I would try to use a patient summary profile, an Australian one, and if I derive both my actor from IPS and my profile from IPS, do I, as an IG editor, need to do anything? Or would derive work? Would it automatically overwrite things? I was kind of hoping that it would because I'm lazy. It does not. At the moment, it does nothing. There's this idea that the profile doesn't know it's supposed to know about the actors you just defined. It's not doing anything at the moment here. It would in the snapshot table. You can see the. Oh no, you can't see the actors at the moment. Let me just show that filter. No, that's showing obligations. Okay, that's supposed to show you the IPS actors. I have no idea why it's not. I'll raise a thingy on that. It's supposed to. But if we look at, if I derive from IPS, and this time I try to set my obligations, as in I try to meet the requirement of my actors. So for the AUPS actor consumer, it has to at least inherit the obligations of the IPS consumer actor. And so if I go in and I set those, what you actually see is both of them suddenly show up. And I had a talk with the IG authoring folks this morning, and what they're coming to, and I think this is a good idea, is what we think should happen is that there should be a extension that you can add to a structure definition that will say that will let you identify the actors of relevance. And IG Publisher, for example, would read that, and only the actors called out in your extension would be displayed here, even though you're deriving from IPS, or in another circumstance, AU core, it wouldn't automatically render the AU core actors unless you set those in the extension. And so this would allow me to, say that what's relevant for us is patient, summary, consumer, and producer. Apparently, the reason why it doesn't automatically just say, well, this is obviously this IPS thing, so I don't need to show both, is to allow you to structure generic apparent concept actors, like a HIE actor or a database actor, but then also define specific use cases or contexts of domain, but that it's relevant within your IG to actually show both the parent and the child. So yeah, that makes sense to me that they'll continue to allow that. Can I just check in with folks, because I thought that made sense on what they were saying and going forwards with an extension. I think there's other people on the line who are facing this, like e-requesting. Does that approach make sense? Should we consider something else around how we're going to define or pull in actors or say what is relevant? If nobody has an opinion, that's fine. Oh, Ruben, your
I
hand's
had
up.
my hand up. So yeah, I was in that discussion and I wasn't actually sure if what was being proposed aligns to what I'm hoping will be the outcome of this. But what my first point is, I think the last part of that conversation related to you saying if you don't explicitly repeat the obligations, then they just don't show up. So that's not right. That needs to be fixed. But what I would like
Agreed.
to see, is all the relevant actors listed that have any kind of obligation. It shouldn't be necessary to repeat obligations if one's inheriting from a parent. Sorry, yeah, to repeat obligations in an actor that inherits from a parent actor. But what should be displayed, I think, I'm all about ensuring that the source of these obligations are clear. So rather than just having the child actor and all the obligations it inherits and it defines stated, I'd rather like to see the source of the parent ones explicitly stated. So so in this case, let's say there were some obligations on IPS which you're inheriting, and there's some that you are defining an experimental AUPS producer, then they should both be there in line with where they're defined, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice if AI didn't have to do this. Like I didn't have to manually put in every single one of these.
Exactly.
And in fact, it
Yeah.
populated the source as from IPS automatically.
Yeah.
That was what I was kind of hoping it would do.
Yeah, good. There is one sort of corner case with that, though, Danielle, and that is it certainly may be the case that we want to define an actor and make it the relevant one in our profile. But also it'd be the case that that actor doesn't yet define any obligations of its own. In that case, I still would like to see it here so that an adopter or implementer of the spec knows that that's actually the primary actor and it inherits things, and that's so how they're coming to being. But what you put in the obligations box to the left of it could be something like only those inherited from parent or something like that. I just don't want it to be not stated just because it doesn't actually define any obligations.
Yeah, I think that's a second enhancement, and it could even be above the table on like actors relevant for this profile or something up the top.
Sure. That'll be fine.
So we can look at that as well.
I got a question. So even when we derive our actors, we also add capability statements as well, right?
Not always. We're not here. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, so they're different. They're different.
Yes,
Because
they
otherwise,
are.
why bother having an actor?
Well, why bother having an actor is shall able to populate doesn't necessarily require a set of RESTful interactions.
Yeah,
So
so you're
this
adding
does
capability.
things in terms of defining your conformance expectations.
Yeah.
I totally agree capability statements are awesome, but I
Yeah.
think they do other things than what this does.
So yeah, so when we derive our producer, AUPS producer, we are adding the RESTful.
No, we're not.
So what are we doing?
We are defining conformance expectations. We have conformance expectations on shell handle, should display, and the rest of it that we inherit from IPS that we have to meet that help define how a system is conformant to AU patient summary. But we don't have a required RESTful interface definition on
Yeah.
how you achieve that, which
That's
is what the capability statement would do. So
So
that
what-
part is left up open.
So what's the difference between AUPS producer and just producer IPS?
Okay. So the reason we had to do it is because we have additional mass supports.
Yeah, okay. So you're adding some extra
Yeah, we are.
constraints.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
they
fine.
inherit everything from IPS, but yeah, it's not
Yeah.
not a straight one for one. There
Okay.
are additional expectations on
Yeah, cool.
on every resource, actually.
Cool.
Yeah, every single resource has at least one element that has something a little bit different about it.
Yeah. So I guess the question, like for the IG, it's like if you wanted to only be an IPS producer,
Then you
This-
be an
this-
IPS.
yeah, then this list makes it very clear what your
Well,
obligations
why
are.
are you looking at AU patient summary to implement IPS? I think that's a poor choice. Go implement IPS. They've got some good guidance on how to be agnostic to local
Yeah.
jurisdictions.
But maybe I just want to implement AUPS and I'm just an IPS system.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
will.
yeah, no, I'm just thinking about the display because what would be the goal to not
But
show
I don't want to
the
have full rows
IPS?
here. I mean,
Yeah.
I think part of what I would like clicking on this to do is to make it clear that this is an IPS producer.
Yeah.
So it's that thing that we're trying to say is an Australian patient summary is an IPS. It conforms to all the requirements there, right?
Yeah.
But there's an additional set of local jurisdictional
Yep.
expectations for how you can best move within the national healthcare context.
Cool. That's good. So do you think like would the goal be to display without the IPS bundle
For me,
applications?
yes.
Yeah.
For the way that we're positioning this IG, if
Yeah.
I had different use cases, no. But we are like our advice will be if you are truly just doing IPS,
Yeah.
go look at IPS.
Yeah.
That an Australian patient summary will totally act as an IPS.
Yeah,
Like
you
if
can
you
hear
just
that. Yeah.
take one of these overseas and don't do anything else, it will still act as an IPS.
Cool.
But the only
good.
reason you need to or want to read this spec, we're hoping, is because you actually want to be implementing an Australian patient summary.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you are meeting those obligations by implementing a EPS producer. Yeah.
Yes, you are. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to have to
Restate it. Yeah.
restate it there when we can state it in principle and say that we meet all of those obligations. And sometimes they'll be stricter. And so going to Ruben's point, but I have a slightly different opinion. So let's say we end up with, and this is just a complete hypothetical, I'm not proposing this, that we actually say shall populate, not able to populate. That's stronger. I don't want to see IPS shall able to populate up here. I really only want people to, for an Australian patient summary, be seeing the relevant obligations here. Noting that if they meet these, they still meet IPS, but sometimes ours might be stricter because it's a profile on top of IPS.
I am supportive of that. However, whether the tooling will need to understand whether some of those obligations are stronger versions of each other in order to facilitate that, I guess.
Yeah.
Or they'd have to be explicit
Agreed.
rules. Yeah.
And I guess that's why we've got this testing space where we keep throwing Graham comments and going, oh, we're trying out something, see what it does.
Is the obligation types code system a hierarchical one?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that might help.
It is. Some of them have two parents. So populate has both able to populate and populate if known as parents. So it is hierarchical, but there's a little bit of complexity where they've done it over here, like this one. That column is parent, by the way. So this says populate inherits from both populate if known and able to populate.
They they could do it like additional bindings and put a key on it.
It seems nasty for an
Yeah.
editor. And can I just point out, part of the reason I'm asking is I don't want to have to set all of this. I feel like just how we've been able to derive profiles, and I didn't have to make it up myself, we should be able to say, my actor is derived, my profile is derived. You should be able to just publish what that means.
Yeah.
Okay, I've
Cool.
taken up the time, and I just wanted to share that, and I'll come back with, if we've got future FHIR Work Group meetings where there's more time, and show where that's at and get people's feedback. Yep, no, appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Right, so that got about 5 minutes left in the meeting. So if we want to take a discussion of any of the action items, or if there's anything else that somebody wants to raise in the last 5 minutes, otherwise we will look to get those action items raised on the Zulip by Brett and a couple of others, and then move to close out the meeting.
Do we have an agenda for the next meeting created?
Not
Yep.
yet, no.
Can I ask Ruben, SPCU, is that coming?
Yeah, it's coming at the next meeting.
Awesome.
Well, there's that.
That was my main question, to be
We're
honest.
done now.
On...
That's
Yeah.
the agenda, isn't it?
I hope not.
Let's have a go.
Yeah, let's see how we go.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll close it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.